Hi, welcome to Gideon Taylor's PeopleSoft Master Series. Today's webinar is Drop Zones and Other Special Forces Tactics to Go Vanilla. We'll be covering such tools as drop zones, event mapping, and page and field configurator, and also reviewing a Go Vanilla strategy that you can apply to your PeopleSoft systems. For more than 18 years, Gideon Taylor has been working with PeopleSoft clients to help simplify, optimize, and automate business processes that either PeopleSoft doesn't automate or doesn't automate in a way that meets an organization's unique requirements. Our focus is to help our clients revolutionize business processes, enabling them to work simply, effectively, efficiently, and flexibly. Our clients span a wide variety of industries, including government, higher education, retail, manufacturing, energy, healthcare, and others. Now let's join Paul Taylor, President and CEO of Gideon Taylor.
We just a quick view before we do the first poll. This is what you can expect content-wise, mostly how-to. That might actually be a little more than the 50%. We'll talk strategy. You'll hear a little bit of shameless plugs for GT products and services. We've already given you about half of that. And then we've got a little bit of gratuitous infographics, but that's mostly just this one. Okay, Scott, you want to launch the first poll?
Sounds good. Thanks, Paul. So we just wanted to get a little bit of information from you all. We'll keep this open for about 30 seconds. Just asking for information in terms of what PeopleSoft application suites you use, and then what release of tools. The tools release is very pertinent to our discussion this afternoon because drop zones was only recently released in 8.5.7.
Looks like we've got, so far HCM is winning, so if you haven't participated in the poll yet and you're on something, another pillar, this is your last chance to claim dominance.
Right, make sure your vote counts.
There is a lot of adoption of 8.5.7, that's great to see.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and close the polling. Thank you very much.
Still looks like the most popular platform or prevalent platform right now is 8.5.6. That's still a lot you can do there, as we'll see. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move forward. So we're going to present these three tools in the context of a case study. And that case study here is to demodify and modernize position data. That is an HCM component, but hopefully you'll be able to, those of you on other platforms will be able to make the conceptual leap to how this would apply to you. So in our situation, our customers are saying that the position data component is dated. It's a classic component. We'd really like to get to mobile. It's also been heavily modified. We have fields that have been added to the component. We've removed fields. We've changed labels. We've added some code to get some of the custom behavior that we want, and we've also made some fields read-only. It's currently a core office component only. There's no approval process, so requests are coming in on PDFs and emails, and then they're being hand-keyed in the HR office. And we'd like to have that be automated. And it's expensive to maintain because all those mods have to be reapplied with every upgrade and now with every pump. So our Go Vanilla strategy is to implement a new feature. This is fluid position management, which came out in 9.2, HCM 9.2, image 29. And we're going to use some hot new tech that we're going over in this session, drop zones, page and field configurator, and event mapping to replace mods with configurations and with code that doesn't modify delivered objects. So here are our requirements more specifically. This here is a screenshot of the fluid position management page, or at least the top of it. So that's where we're going to be making these changes. We need to, on this new delivered fluid page, we need to add an annual review level dropdown. And of course, the assumption is these are the customizations that exist, the modifications that exist on the current fluid page. So by moving over here, we're going to be able to retire that component. So we've got an annual review level dropdown that we need to add budget source and a handles HIPAA data checkbox. We're going to change some existing fields. First, we're going to hide these checkbox fields here because the customer doesn't use them. And we're going to change the union code field here and make the label bargaining affiliation. We're going to make that field required, and we're going to default it to the value of RSW. And then we're going to add a custom edit so that when an annual review field changes, or when the grade changes, our custom annual review level field will be updated automatically. So that's our scope of what we're going to implement. We'll walk through all of that. First, a brief introduction to our first tool, drop zones. So a drop zone is a tool to add custom fields to delivered pages, delivered fluid pages right now, without modifying any delivered objects. And those of us who have been in PeopleSoft a long time, that's a long time coming. It's great to have that ability. Skill set that you need is technical. This is a technical task. It's there are app designer based steps plus a PIA configuration step. You'll need to know how to develop a new subpage, record objects, possibly style sheets, and you need to know the component name and market for the target component that we're applying the drop zone to. When are drop zones available? Well, that depends on the pillar that you're on. First off, you do need PeopleTools 857. That's kind of a prerequisite. That doesn't mean that there are drop zones available. It just means that you got the prerequisite covered. The actual drop zones that you are going to make use of are delivered in various PUMs. The first was in HCM image 30, FSCM image 31, and CS image 14 also has drop zones available. And you can glance through and see what was available there. CS, it's really hard to find documentation on where they put their drop zones, but if you follow this navigation and do a little search, you can see what drop zones are available. Here's an example of how to search in that page, although this is a different search string. So you can search in, let me just back up one slide. Again, PeopleTools, Portal, Configure Drop Zones. You get this page, and then you can search to see what drop zones are available in your instance. If you don't see any, you're probably not on the right PUM level yet. Okay, so let's walk through creating and, creating a subpage to go in a drop zone to accomplish the requirement to add some fields to this delivered fluid page. First, we're going to create a fluid subpage and put our new fields on it. We're going to use a delivered PSL simple subpage layout. Then we're going to assign that subpage to an existing drop zone. So the drop zones themselves they have to be delivered by PeopleSoft in order to use them to avoid customizing delivered pages. The way it works is they basically put an empty box on all of their new fluid pages, and you can stick fields in that empty box without modifying that page. If they haven't put the box on the page, though, it won't help you to add a box to the page because that will be customizing the page. So you're restricted in terms of a Go Vanilla strategy to using drop zones that have already been added and delivered by Oracle. So we will then assign our subpage to an existing drop zone, and we can style our subpage appropriately. We won't actually walk through the styling, we'll just show you why you might need to do it. Okay, so with that, let's go ahead and do a walkthrough. Here is our fluid page, and this is our target. This is what we're going to be changing. There's our grade field there. So we're going to come over here to App Designer and start by creating the new subpage. We'll come create a fluid page, and here we're going to search for the template, the layout page that we want. That's the simple subpage. And then we get to save as and give it our own name. Once we've given that our own name, we will change the properties of this page to make it a subpage. It's already marked as a fluid page. Well, now it's ready for us to put our fields on it. Now, I have already created a record here, and that's a thing to consider. If you're going to add custom fields and you don't want to modify a delivered record, then you need to create your own record. This record is going to basically be a sibling record to the record that is already on the page. So that means it has the same key structure as the existing record: position number, effective date, and effective sequence. This allows me to avoid modifying the delivered record. It does mean that to get to the fields that I'm adding here, I'll need to, for example, if I want to have them in a query, I'll need to join this additional record in that query in order to combine this information with the delivered fields in position data. It's extra work, but we're saving the modifications that we would otherwise have to continually reapply to the system. So I'm just going to drag and drop my new fields over here. I'm going to put them in a nice tidy 2-column format like the page where I am going to display them, and save that. So that's the PIA step. That's done. Now, that's the App Designer step. Now we're going into the PIA configuration. Again, that is in PeopleTools, and then Portal, and then down at the bottom, you will see a new Configure Drop Zones option. So we come here, and I just hit search there because we actually recorded this this demo before the initial release of new drop zones for HCM. So we had to actually create our own drop zone. Again, that doesn't do us any good in a production instance because that would customize the page. But in your instance, if you have it available, you should see a long list here instead of just this one, which I added myself. So you would select the drop zone that you want. Usually on a delivered page, there will be at least 2 drop zones, one at the top and one at the bottom, maybe 3. Sometimes there's one in the middle. You decide which box you want to put your new fields in. We're going to choose the subpage that we just created, and that's it. We actually don't have to reboot the app server or log in or log out or anything. It will just be there. So as we navigate into the page, our target page here we are on the target page. If we scroll down, we will see our 3 new fields that have been added. And they're already active. They had lookups on them already. So I can put some data into them and save the page. If I go over to the database and select from my record, I've got data there. So that's that easy. It's really quite easy to implement. Let's see. So a few things to consider. First, again, drop zones only prevent modifications if the page and component you're going to add them to, you're going to add fields to, already has a drop, if the page has a drop zone on it. You have to have the box to put the new fields in, or you have to customize the page to add the box, and that removes the point. So drop zones are currently only available for fluid pages. We do have a promise from Oracle that they will be delivering drop zones for classic pages in 8.5.8. And that's good because really when it comes down to it, if you look at your fluid adoption, for most clients, they haven't customized fluid pages. If they've adopted fluid, they've adopted them delivered. That I'm sure that there are exceptions and places where you can move your fluid customizations into drop zones. But I think in most cases, it's going to be a similar to this case study where you say, well, I want to adopt the fluid page, but I can't without it having some of the customizations that we've made in Classic. So we'll put those in a drop zone. With Classic page drop zones, you'll be able to reduce your modifications even if you're not ready to go fluid, or even if there isn't a fluid version of your component available. So when it's available for Classic, that'll also be available for Classic Plus. Drop zones add fields to the component buffer. So they are then subject to the same restrictions that you have for component buffer fields in PeopleSoft. You can't add multiple records, for example, for level above level 0. But most of the drop zones are going to be at level 0, so it's going to be okay. You can refer to those in code. You can enter into them through a component interface. It's really quite robust functionality. You can nest drop zones up to 2 levels. I really don't know why you'd want to. You can download that. We'll make the presentation available afterwards so you can use it as a reference and go to these reference materials. Scott, do we have any drop zone specific questions in the queue?
No, we don't.
Okay, we'll plow forward. If you end up with some, please add them. So next tool, Page and Field Configurator. It is a tool to customize the appearance and behavior of both classic and fluid pages and their fields without modifying any delivered objects.
Paul, I apologize.
Okay.
There was one that I missed in the chat window. Does the documentation Oracle provides list all the pages where drop zone pages exist?
That is hard to find. I actually have not found a page list. What I have seen is a list of functionality like we showed on the previous slide. What I showed there is pretty much everything I've been able to find. It's documented differently for each pillar. If you find a list for Campus Solutions, please let me know. Otherwise, but for the most part, you can assume if you're on a version, on a PUM release that has drop zones, I think that they've pretty much added drop zones to all of the self-service facing fluid pages. So you can pretty much assume that if it's a fluid page and it's self-service, it probably has a drop zone on it. Good question.
And
Thank you.
We've got a couple more here, Paul, that just came
Okay.
in. One is, how do you migrate drop zones?
You migrate drop zones using the data migration workbench. And so you can find documentation on Oracle's support site for how to migrate the configuration. That's migrating the PIA configuration. The subpages and records, everything that you build in App Designer needs to be migrated as a project, as an App Designer project.
Very good. Can you use work-derived records in drop zones?
Yes, you can use derived records in drop zones. You can actually put anything you want in there that you can put on a page. Of course, if you use a derived record, that's not going to store the data anywhere, but yes, you can add that. You can add charts, you can add instructions, anything that you want that you could put on a regular page, you can put in a drop zone.
And then we've got one more. I would like to ask if drop zones are user configurable, why you needed to create a subpage. Was that just an example of a specific scenario, or is this something that, again, is something that Oracle is claiming is user configurable, but really isn't?
It's as configurable as you saw. Basically, the way that it's configurable is that you can configure the page itself without changing the underlying page, but you still have to build, it's still a technical tool. So yes, to the extent that, and that's sometimes not clear, that the way that Oracle talks about it, but no, it is not a configuration only tool. It is configuration plus development. And if you want to be able to put fields on pages without development, hold on to the end of the presentation.
And then there was an addendum to that question. So you basically could do the same thing by building a custom page?
Yes. Yes, you could do that. Rather than, if you want to avoid modifying a delivered page, building a custom page is an appropriate vanilla strategy.
Okay. And then there are two more quickly, and then I think we need to get on to the next topic. Will Oracle continue to offer common attribute framework after drop zones in Campus Solutions?
It looks to me like they're still expanding their use of common attribute framework, so I think that they will coexist.
All right, last one. Can we use drop zones at any level on the page or only on level 0?
You can only use them where they have been put, but you can add in that drop zone your own level 1 or level 2 rows. So I haven't seen an example of a drop zone that is at level 1 already. They probably exist, although they wouldn't be in a grid because you can't really put a subpage in there very, very easily. So, so yeah, you can add your own level 1, your own level 2. The challenge, of course, is going to be if you want to add fields to an existing level 1 and level 2 or level 2, and there isn't a drop zone that lands you there.
Great.
Okay,
thanks,
with
Paul,
that,
and thanks for all the great questions.
Yes, great questions. We'll plow ahead here. So Page and Field Configurator lets you, this is actually a config tool. The skill set you need is functional, but you do need to know the component name and market of the page or the component that you're going to modify. We'll show you how to do that. This was available in Tools 85602, so it should be, So it should be available to most people here, but you do need to also have these image levels, those POM levels. So quick how-to, you need to find the field names and target component name and market that you're going to make a change to. We're going to use this tool to turn off those checkbox fields and to change the label and behavior of the union code field. So we need to find those field names and the component name and market, and I'll walk through how to do that. Then you come here to Enterprise Components. Basically, if it's a config only tool, it'll be in Enterprise Components. If there's a technical piece to it, it'll be in PeopleTools. That's a good general rule of thumb. Isn't always true, but it's a rule of thumb. And then you can restrict application, make it conditional. We'll mention that briefly. And then there is a step you want to make sure that you get, because you'll save, but then you'll still need to go to a different tab to apply the configuration to make it work. Okay, so let's walk through that. Here again are the fields that we're going to be working with. These 5 plus union code. I'm going to right click in my browser and hit inspect in order to see position data e-union code there. So that let me figure out a little bit what the field name is, that it's union_CD. Then I'm going to drill in here in Enterprise Components to Page and Field Configurator, add, put in the position that I'm working with here. It's position data FL and the market. We'll go over, by the way, how to find the market here in the next video. So now I'm in the right component. I can call it what I want here, and then I can search for the fields that I want to be able to change. So I'm going to start here with one of those checkbox fields, and I'm searching for my key position field, and now I've got a row for that. I'm going to fast forward, adding in the rest of those fields, finding them. We'll assume I've already looked all those names up before. So I'm searching through, finding those fields, and now I have my 6 fields. I can modify how they behave. For 5 of these, I'm just going to hide them. It's going to say, hey, this is a required field, but we don't care because it defaults to N, so it'll still be populated. We just won't have to see it. The union code field, I'm going to modify the label, change that to bargaining affiliation, make it required, and put in a default value. Okay, that's not too tough. Now we hit save and we're done. No, we're not done. We have that other step that I said we have to do after save. Come back up to map to portal registry, and you're going to select this this place on the registry where this component appears and hit apply configuration, so that now it is actually mapped to the component event. Save it again, and now we're ready to test. Again, we can go right on over to our target component and see the difference in the behavior. We'll get in this way, this time by adding a new component or in a new position. And now, well, no checkbox fields. And now we have a bargaining affiliation field, and it has a default value and a little asterisk, meaning that it's required. That's it. Pretty straightforward. We will move on to some considerations. Again, a few things to remember. Configuration can only be applied to registered components. What that means is if the fields you want to change the behavior of are on a secondary page or another modal window, you can't use Page and Field Configurator. Also, remember that configurations still require maintenance and migration. This also is migrated with Data Migration Workbench. But it means that you need to add this to, if you're going to do this, you want to add it to your typical procedure of migrating things. And you need to keep track of them, especially if you have user list specific ones. So you could go in there and say, I want to make this field read only for Bob, because Bob keeps changing it. We don't want him to. Remember why that behavior is there is requires documentation. You still have to keep track of all this stuff. It doesn't make it free just because it's configuration based, but it does make it more effective and efficient. It makes it more, it reduces the lifecycle cost to do it in configuration. But you still want to use wisdom and put together a standardized approach to applying these. You also want to remember that configurations have to be applied in multiple components if those fields and pages are in multiple components. So the fact that you have hidden a field on one page doesn't necessarily mean that same field may not show up on another page. You need to hide it everywhere if you want it to be universally hidden. Okay, before we go
Paul,
to
we've
event
got
mapping, PFC questions.
We do have one question on Page and Field Configurator. In essence, Page and Field Configurator creates event mapping behind the scenes. At a recent conference, someone mentioned that doing work in Page and Field Configurator will overlay your event mapping. Is this true?
No, it will not. There is an error that shows up, or a warning message that shows up that gives the impression that it might, or but it doesn't. You can have multiple event mappings on the same component, and unless you name them the same, they won't override each other. So yeah, case in point, we're about to do that here on the same component, and we will have both the behavior of the Page and Field Configurator and of the event map. So no, you can do both. I'm not even sure if you could name them the same. I'm not sure it would let you name them the same. So, but that would be the only way that you could wipe out one with the other. Good question.
One more question. How do you migrate PP config changes?
You migrate the configuration changes for Page and Field Configurator using the data migration workbench.
Very good. Thank you very much.
You should be able to find scripts for that on Oracle support.
Oh, wait,
Okay.
one more, Paul, on chat.
Okay.
Are Page and Field Configurator updates considered vanilla, or do they need to be addressed separately during upgrades?
They are considered vanilla. When you receive a PUM update, it won't undo your configuration changes. So you can take an update to the underlying page, and it won't. You don't have to reapply your configuration, and you don't have to modify or manage that page separately. So yes, this is a legitimate vanilla tool.
Great. Thank you very much. That's it.
You bet. Okay, third tool, event mapping. So event mapping is a tool to add custom code. We've had a tool to add custom fields. We've had a tool to to modify the behavior of delivered fields. This is a tool to add custom code, and to do so without modifying delivered objects. Skill set you need is technical. This is code. It's also, like drop zones, is app designer based, plus there's a PIA configuration step. You'll need to be able to develop application class people code, and you'll need to know the portal registry navigation for your target component. And I'll go over here how to find that, which also applies back to the to Page and Field Configurator. This was available all the way from Tools 855. So should be available to everyone on the call if I saw that survey correctly. Let's see. So a quick how-to. First thing you're going to do is write some code, and I've given you a stub here that is actually the one you want to use for to write your code in. So again, grab the deck after the webinar, and you can use that as the framework to put your code in. You're going to define a related content service, and you're going to find the portal registry of your target component, and then you're going to create an event map that ties the related content service to the event, the people code event that you want that code to run in. So related content lets you define kind of a standalone piece of PeopleSoft content, and app class is one of the types of related content you can do. Once you've created that, you then use event mapping to tie that related content to a particular component level people code event, so that when that event fires, the app class in your related content service fires and runs your code. Okay, so here is a quick walkthrough of that. here we are back in App Designer. We are going to create a, first off, an application package, which is a container to store app class people code in. We're going to give it our own name here. To extend position data, we're going to insert an application class, name it what we wish again, and then we're going to paste in, first we need to save this, but then we're going to paste in the code that this is our, here we've pasted in our template that I gave you because we need to extend the related content service. And then we paste in or write the code that we want to execute in our target component. This code is just going through, it's evaluating, we're going to run it when the grade field changes. We're going to put it under grade field change. So when we change the grade, we'll check and see if we also need to change the value of our new annual review level field. So based on the grade of the position, different levels of management need to do the annual review. So now I've got my code. I've got a little more config to do here. First off, we're going to go and go to PeopleTools and Portal and go to the related content service. We're going to start by defining related content service because we're creating a new one. Going to add a new value and we'll give it whatever name we wish. And then when we add it, we have the opportunity then to define the service name. And then the main thing to do here is to choose the right type of service. We're using an application class service, which will then let us enter the package name, the path, which in this case is just a colon, and the class name that we just created. So that then associates our class code with a related content service. We save that. And now we need to go figure out, well, where is it that we're really going to attach this? So I'm just navigating back into the component, the target component. Once I get there, I will use Control-J to find the name of my component. Then I'm going to go use a tool to find where that sits on the portal registry. I'm going through this because now that our navigation is getting farther and farther away from the breadcrumbs, sometimes it's hard to tell where on the portal registry it is. Is you're doing fluid navigation, you're not really following the portal registry to get there. So if you come down here in enterprise, oh, I've missed it. Enterprise components, let's see here, skip ahead. I missed my button. Okay, so our navigation then is enterprise components to find the portal registry. It's in enterprise components and then this great little tool called Find Object Navigation. This lets you put in, search by either a page name or a component name or etc. to find where that component lives on the portal registry. So here is where we need to know. I'm going to actually save that because I'll need to know it later on in the process here. And we could get confused and apply our event mapping to the wrong portal registry and then it just won't show up where we want it to. So next step, again, back into PeopleTools because we need to apply that related content service we built as an event map. We do that under Manage Related Content Service and then a little link at the top there, Event Mapping. And here, this can be a real pain to embed these sometimes. Okay, we'll go ahead and start from there. So event mapping and map application classes to component events. Here now we are trying to find, this is where we need to know the portal registry, because we're going to be drilling down into that structure that we just searched. Always include the hidden CREFs. In this case, fluid pages are almost always going to be hidden. So I need to hit the include hidden CREFs to find the one I'm looking for. Note, manage positions, I looked it up, I'm glad, or I would have maybe chosen managed position, which is not the one I'm looking for. So now I'm looking in that target component to find the people code event that I want to tie my related content service to. So this also can be hard to find unless you hit this unrestricted prompt button. Is I'm going to be searching in position data E, and if I try to look up the field name and I'm looking for grade, it's not there. I need to use the unrestricted prompt. The unrestricted prompt also means you can find fields that aren't even on the component, but so you do want to be careful. But yeah, that's the only way to find a lot of those fields. Then I'm searching for the content service that I created that I need to tie to this event, and there it is. I give it a sequence number. Let me just point out that sequence number means that you can add multiple event maps, just like you can add have page and field configurator along with these event maps. And then I can choose whether I want that to be a pre-process or post-process. That means if there's already code on that event, do I want my code to run before that code or after the delivered code? I'm going to choose post and save it. And now I'm ready to test again. So I'll head back into our target component. I recorded these out of order, so you're going to see the fields at the top that we hid in the previous step. Don't be thrown by that. But if we scroll down, we'll see our grade field and our target fields here for annual review. When we change the grade, watch this closely. Look, that field changed. I've got custom code behavior without modifying the underlying objects. And that's great. Again, the value here with this and with drop zones, it isn't that you can do it without a techie. It's that you do it vanilla. So you don't have to reapply modifications when you upgrade. Okay, so quick review of event mapping. There is a little indicator in App Designer that shows whether a component has event mappings associated with it. As you can imagine, it would be really easy to get this to lose this code and to not understand why this weird behavior is happening on your component. The guy who wrote it is gone, and no one knew that he had used event mapping to add this code, and we don't know where this behavior is coming from. Needs to be documented well, and needs to be part of a standard process. It really helps for all these tools to be used as an overarching initiative, part of an overarching initiative to go vanilla. You want to, again, be careful to use the correct portal registry navigation. You could actually use a field and record name on a target component reference that doesn't really belong to it. So you have to be careful. And then I've got some reference materials there for you. So questions about event mapping?
Paul, we've got a couple questions now. Are there any special steps necessary to have these three techniques work with component interfaces?
The drop zones work automatically with component interface. I believe that page and field configurator also works, and so does event mapping. You just need to make sure that you are you set up the component interface. Let's see, am I telling the truth here? I'm actually not positive on event mapping. I need to check on that. So if you want to send Scott your contact information, I can check and make sure. But it definitely won't work unless you're using the component in its appropriate portal registry. And that I'm not sure if you can associate that through a component interface. So I'll check on that for you. I actually don't know on event mapping in component interface, but I'm happy to. If you want to hear the answer to that, please let Scott know, and we'll send that out.
Very good. Thanks, Paul. 2 more questions. First one, what people code events are supported by event mapping?
All the component events. So you have basically your component level events and then your component record field level events.
And then finally, can you use event mapping to trigger an email to be sent when a specific trigger is triggered?
Yes, that would be a great application for it.
Great. Thank you. That's it for now.
Unless you want to be able to trigger emails without having to write code, in which case you'd want to think about something we're about to talk about. Okay,
Good
so
transition.
I've got just a few minutes to talk about strategic considerations and to do the last of our shameless plugs. So a few things to consider. Going vanilla doesn't mean that you can't get the functionality you want. It means that you go about getting that functionality in a way that leaves you with the lowest total cost of ownership for PeopleSoft. Another consideration is that now that we've gone to selective adoption and PUM releases, you're hitting your mods more and more frequently. We have more clients saying, hey, we need help because we can't get these PUMs applied fast enough to meet the demand for our users because we have to go through the mods every time we apply a PUM. Taking the mods out will make it easier to uptake new functionality that Oracle is delivering in the PUM releases. It's one of the main reasons we're pushing going vanilla. Again, going vanilla doesn't mean you can't have your custom behavior. It means that you do it in a way that doesn't get in the way of upgrades. You want to do this to help avoid maintenance gridlock, which is my own term to refer to the fact that when you build something that requires a lot of technical maintenance, that bites into your ability to use those technical resources to build more automation. So if you're gonna tie up your technical people reapplying the customizations you already have, they're not going to be able to make new ones for you. But if you can make them easier to reapply and to maintain by doing them through vanilla-friendly strategies like these, you can get more custom behavior and more automation. So we want to maximize the value and minimize maintenance. That's one of the main reasons to go vanilla. So what is it? It isn't vanilla to modify app designer level delivered PeopleSoft objects. But it can still be, of course, vanilla to leverage configuration options. It's vanilla to create touchless extensions of existing features. That includes event mapping. And it's vanilla to build bolt-on applications. If you build a new page, you're not renaming or you're not modifying the existing page or component or field or record or whatever, that's vanilla because you can apply a new POM and those new pages are not going to show up on your compare report. So you can consider a bolt-on application means it's in PeopleSoft, it's in the same database, but it does not modify the existing delivered objects. So that is still a vanilla strategy and one that we leverage all the time and that our product really is an example of. So here's a quick overview of a strategy to go vanilla. First, you review each modification And the first thing you want to do is look and see what the current delivered feature set is in your product to see if you still need it, because perhaps there is new functionality that makes it unnecessary, the mod unnecessary. And you want to seriously consider adopting the delivered behavior. Can you change the business process to fit? The answer is always yes. The only question is how much will it cost and is it worth it to do it? So as you consider if it's worth it to do it, think about, well, what would be the additional benefits of adopting of changing our business process to fit the delivered behavior? There may be some, but it still doesn't make sense to use PeopleSoft at all if you can't get custom behavior out of it. So if you still need the difference from the delivered behavior, the first thing to look is to look at the configuration options for that feature. So I could look in position data and see, well, can I change the labels? Can I turn the fields on or off in the actual position data module? If not, then I can look at general functional configuration options like page and field configurator. There are new frameworks that I could maybe stick into the process, the questionnaire framework, attachment framework, acknowledgements. Maybe those can cover me. If not, then, okay, well, let's look at general technical extension options. That includes drop zones and event mapping. Those are technical pieces that you could also use in conjunction with fluid approvals. As the questionnaire asked, could you put an email in there? Yes. Could you also, in an event mapping, could you also trigger an approval process through event mapping? Yes. It's also going to be technical, but it can be a touchless technical extension that lets you remain vanilla. Next level up, look at functional bolt-on applications. That can include Forms and Approval Builder, which we think is pretty simplistic and underpowered. It can include these frameworks up here. It can include GT eForms, which we're just going to take a minute to show you here in a minute, which is our bolt-on workflow-enabled electronic form toolkit. And you want to take an approach of saying, okay, if we're doing this, we're giving a new front end to this process, then we have workflow, and then we treat the delivered component as a black box, and we update it as necessary. But we've taken over the front end experience. And that's what we do all the time with GT eForms. Then if you can't do it functionally, well, look to do it with a technical bolt-on. You can do custom development, like we said, build your own page. You could extend existing app packages. You can use GT eForms, which is technically extensible. GT eForms lets you build pages and fields functionally and extend them technically. And there are other native third-party bolt-ons that you could consider. If none of that works, you can look at integrating non-native hosted third-party providers, other SaaS solutions that can integrate with PeopleSoft. Or maybe a blasphemous thought, but consider keeping the modification. If there's no other way to do it, if it's worth the expense to reapply it, that might still be the answer. But it should be the last answer after all of these other things are exhausted.
Paul, we've got one other question that came in.
Okay.
Can we execute the code in between the logic?
I think that is referring to event mapping and saying, if I've got a chunk of code and I need the delivered code and I need to stick some custom code in the middle of that delivered code, no, you can't. You can end up doing some crazy stuff, throwing from before the delivered code and catching at the end of the delivered code. But yeah, that's a limitation. You can't really stick it in the middle.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so with GT eForms, again, we'll end with this shameless plug. GT eForms lets you build custom fluid pages and applications in PeopleSoft without development. A functional person can put the fields on the page. A functional person can actually add logic. A functional person can hide and unhide fields conditionally, can pre-populate the form with data, and have that data dynamically update based on changes in the component. A functional person can build notifications, and a functional person can add approval processes. There are still some technical pieces, including updating delivered PeopleSoft components through component interface. There are technical tasks, and there are many technical extensions available where you can tie in additional people code. But you have the base functionality of your application is completely config based, and you can build this fluid application without doing fluid development. That is really the ultimate approach to Go Vanilla, because you get complete control of your application, and we're not touching any delivered objects. You're getting the benefit of configuration and the benefit of a complete custom solution. So it's like having having custom development without actually having to do a lot of the development. Okay, I saw that we had one more hand raised, and just throw up a few more features here that I just mentioned. Let's see, what was our, can you go to the person who raised their hand, Scott? Scott, do we still have you?
Yeah, sorry about that, Paul. Yeah, it looks like Juan, if you would like to type your question in the chat window or in the question box, that would be great.
And while he's doing that, I'll just throw this on the page. We're not going to have time to go through this demo right now, but you can either make note of this URL, or you can take a picture of this with your smartphone. Go to that QR code. We probably should have put those on the same page. And you'll be able to walk through a GT eForms demo yourself.
And we will be sending out links to both the download the PowerPoint as well as view the webinar recording. So you guys will have those shortly.
Okay, we're out of time. So first, we'd like to thank everyone for attending, and we hope it was valuable to you. Please give us any feedback as to what we could have done better or differently, topics that you would like to hear from us in the future. We would love to have any of that feedback. We will stay on the line for a couple of minutes to answer additional questions if anybody has them. And otherwise, we'll say thank you so much for attending our PeopleSoft Master Series webinar, and we look forward to your attendance and participation in future webinars. The next one is December 11th, Custom Compliance Solutions for PeopleSoft, Automating Minnesota's Wage Theft Law Requirements. I think that's it. So again, thanks everybody, and I appreciate all the great feedback. And again, very grateful for your participation. It's a great launch to our webinar series.